So coming off of the previous chapter, we saw that Kinjaku had met up with various nations around the world and their leaders and basically exposed Jujutsu Kaisen to them. Like showed them curse spirits, sorcerers, curse energy, all of that stuff. And we mainly focus on America, where Cyrus, who is basically like the director of energy or whatever, saw the potential in these sorcerers as being energy sources that could replace like fossil fuels and renewable energy and all that stuff. And he suggested to the president that they straight up just abduct the sorcerers in the Culling game and bring them back to America and use them as research subjects to eventually use them as energy sources, essentially. And that brings us to the beginning of this chapter where he's like, we're talking energy independence. Just one could solve multiple problems. And of course, the president is apprehensive to abduct Japanese citizens because Gege isn't writing the United States president to be completely unredeemable here, which I at least appreciate that much. But going further, Cyrus is like, we can't let China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East, etc. to get ahead in alternative energy by essentially, going after the sorcerers first. And he's like, there's no end to the list of nations that will act. They'll target Japanese people and they won't stop at sorcerers. And then trying to justify what he's suggesting here, he says, this isn't abduction, it's protection. If we lock down this info, we can protect Japan's sorcerers before anyone interferes. And even Kinjaku's like, well put, it's only humane. And then like the president's assistant, I guess, or whoever this is talking to him is like, these talks are being conducted in secrecy, but he could go elsewhere if we refuse. And Kinjaku's like, I already have. Sorcerers are a minority. In November, they'll all congregate in specific areas, which presents a unique opportunity. And this goes back to what I said. He met with various nations. We saw China, I guess India, and then like few others too. So America isn't the only one that's doing this. And I'll go more into this at the end of the review, but like there's going to be more nations involved in this than just America for sure. But this ultimately convinces the president to go ahead with sending US troops there to abduct the sorcerers because he feels that he's protecting Japan in this case. So then we're introduced to Gary K. Johnson, who is the Joint Special Operations Commander, Lieutenant General of the Army. And yeah, this guy is more so what foreigners see of Americans, I suppose. Bigoted and delusional. But the president is basically explaining to him, like what's going on, what they need to do. And he's like, okay, so Gojo isn't going to be around, right? Because he's a little too powerful. Even I'm acknowledging that. And Kinjaku's like, no, I'll have him sealed by then. Because remember, this is a flashback to February, and we're currently in November in the story. So Kinjaku already knew that his prison realm sealing of Gojo plan was going to go smoothly. And then Gary's like, well, then one company will do. How about we take 5 dozen sorcerers? And then going further into his delusions, he's like, these psychics or whatever are greenhorns without training. They'll be no match for us. Muscles and bullets. Nothing beats them. Kinjaku's like, exactly. Even between sorcerers, the force that is physically stronger wins. And obviously that's true, but this reminds me of why Kinjaku probably thinks that like rifles and standard weapons are actually effective against sorcerers too. Because if we go back to chapter 134, we see that Mai uses her curse technique to construct a sniper rifle and fires at Kinjaku, and he ultimately deflects it, but he's like, a sniper rifle? I like that. I agree that it's wise to use conventional weapons when attacking a sorcerer. So I've been also talking about this in my previous reviews and whatnot, but it's not like this is going to be a lopsided battle. Like, rifles are effective against sorcerers. Like, not everybody's Gojo, especially 800 of them against like 60 or so sorcerers. Like, on paper, it's actually more competitive than what you would think. I'm not saying one side is going to win. I mean, I probably would side with the sorcerers, but I wouldn't be surprised if 800 rifles with skilled soldiers using them would be effective as well. But going further, Kinjaku's like, I still do recommend deploying a battalion of at least 800. And Gary's like, haha, it's just as I heard. The Japanese are pessimistic and timid. And then Arami's like, then how about a test? And Kinjaku's like, good idea. 2 sorcerers are right here. For security today, I suppose the 15 men outside this room is just scratching the surface, right? So then this ultimately leads to like this odd sequence where they like take Kinjaku up his offer and they have like this scrimmage or something where they're like actively going to, I don't know, try to take down Kinjaku. I don't know. It's not fully explained what they're doing here, other than just what we see play out. But things just start getting really serious, and they're like, yeah, we're going to show you, Kinjaku, that we can take you down. And Gary starts explaining, like, we've got 15 of the Secret Service elites, and we got 3 SAC teams totaling 30 soldiers. Throw in the Secret Service, and we got 45 heavies to slap down Suguru Ghetto. So yeah, it's like, I don't know, some kind of scrimmage or something, but obviously this is going to work out for them, because Kinjaku's like, shall we wrap this up? Arami's like, you want any help? And he's like, nah, my curse technique will be enough to display the might of jujitsu. Of course, he's referring to Geto's curse spirit manipulation. And then it eventually gets to the point of where like Gary's talking crap and, saying like America's awesome and whatever. But then these bodies just start falling from the sky and he notices it like outside the window. And then we see like these soldiers being lifted into the air. And it's because Kinjaku has like released this massive curse spirit that resembles resembles Ganesh, and I'm sure this is what Gege is basing this off of. But yeah, like I said, he's just lifting them all into the air, these elite soldiers, and just dropping them, and they're just straight up dying here. Like, I'm pretty sure this is death for sure. And then Kinjaku just presents all of the dog tags in front of the president here. And he's like, now let's talk hunting sorcerers. And then we cut back to Takaba, Yuji, Megumi, and Angel, like seemingly running out into the colony here, because it was revealed in the previous chapter that over 800 new players entered their colony, which is probably the US soldiers here, and they're going to encounter them first. And that also goes back to what I was saying before about how Kinjaku had talked to multiple nations here. So I don't think that this is going to be the only group of soldiers entering the culling game. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, we see Okotu, Mai, Noritoshi Kamo, and Hikari run into their own group of soldiers or whatnot from different countries. Like, I'm pretty sure that's going to happen as well. And as for why Kinjaku's doing this, well, we talked about it in the previous review. He has multiple motives here, and maybe he's just cool with multiple things happening. Like, maybe he's fine with some of the soldiers actually succeeding here and abducting some of these sorcerers and taking them back to their respective countries, because if they do start using their cursed energy to replace their standard energy, that would be really interesting, right? Like, imagine replacing the entire power grid with just cursed energy. Obviously, some crazy stuff could go on at that point, like not necessarily in a good way. Things could be manipulated, and I don't know, there could definitely be some side effects for sure, at least, with the citizens as well. But even if they don't succeed, all of these soldiers are now culling game participants, because like once you enter a colony, you're basically acknowledging that you're becoming a player. Therefore, if you are killed, then you are worth a point. And since these are non-sorcerers, they're all worth 1 point. So at the minimum right now, there's like 800 points available, not to mention the other hypothetical amount of soldiers that are possibly in the game as well. So that could all be used for more points and whatnot to make new rules or whatever else, which I'm sure Kinjaku is totally on board with. But on top of that, if some of these soldiers do just wind up killing these sorcerers, well then they would have been killed without jujitsu, meaning that there's a very good chance that then they will become cursed spirits, how we saw happen with Naoya earlier. And it's possible that Gege did that to like remind us that like, hey, this could happen and it might happen again. We saw how powerful Naoya became, so imagine some of these other crazy sorcerers getting killed and then they come back as cursed spirits, and I guess that would count as further evolution, which is one of the big things that Kinjaku wants. But what he ultimately wants, at least going back to chapter 136, is that he wants to essentially create chaos that even he can't control. So this is certainly a step in that direction, right? It's like no matter which way this goes, he's getting what he wants. And I think that's pretty much how we should look at this, right? He doesn't have one like singular goal other than what Tengen told us about him, merging Japan with Tengen's barrier and whatnot. As for the rest of the world, I guess he just wants Jujutsu chaos. But there's more to it, of course. As time goes on, we'll get, more info and whatnot. But this is kind of just like the bulk of it, I suppose. But let me know what you thought about this chapter in the comments. The next one is going to be crazy. I really can't wait. And if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.